I haven't talked about Marvel and DC, I mean, which makes sense. They're providing the bulk of all the comics and the volume of sales and everything else. By the way, have you seen this trick online where people are saying, hey, Image is now the number two publisher, and it's like, well, the number two publisher out of Diamond. Yes, I love the shade that gets thrown at DC, but really sloppy shade, like easily disputable shade. I'm not like DC's champion or enemy. I love this kind of very silly fact. At any rate, sorry, I'm in the intro and I'm already off track. I want to talk about Image a little bit and kind of look at their 2021, where it's going, and why that company's in a really interesting spot right now. Hey everybody, this is Perch. Image is an interesting company. There's a lot of articles, and mainly again these are articles written by people with an agenda. But Image is they've needed some hits. Actually, let me back up a second. So Image lost The Walking Dead, and that was one of their big core titles that both for the monthlies and for the trades and kind of licensing opportunities and things that were really helping put Image on the map. Increasingly, as kind of The Walking Dead went on, it became Kirkman that was getting on the map as much as or more than Image, and that's not a bad thing. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. But Walking Dead ends, and Image is kind of trying to figure out what's going on. The pandemic hits, and there's a pause, and then things get quiet for a while. And Image was kind of re-emerging from the shutdown without a lot of buzz. And what's interesting about Image is that it has a lot more buzz now, I think, as a company. I think that, sorry, no, I'm actually on the wrong track. I don't think Image, the noise and attention and the halo effect around Image has grown much, but the sales have. So Image has had a series of pretty strong books. We've got Crossover by Donny Cates. We've got The Department of Truth by James Tinian. We have um, the Commanders in Crisis by Steve Orlando, and it feels like there's one more in there. There's another book that got some attention, but you've got Undiscovered Country by Scott Snyder. We've got Nocturna coming out by Snyder. There's a couple other things that are coming out. Image and those comics have sold strongly. Not they're the only caveat there, and a lot of people are like, oh look, it's selling 100,000 copies or 80,000 copies. The only kind of hesitancy there is it's a number one. So like Crossover by Donny Cates is getting a lot of noise right now for putting up some huge numbers for Image, which Image needs and Cates needs and indie comics in general need. But the story will really be told in issue kind of 4 and 5 and 6. Because one thing that Image has been somewhat immune from is what I would call the Marvel and DC effect of the number one issue popping a really big number and then it losing half of its numbers by the time it gets to issue 4 or 5. And this has been pretty consistent with Marvel and DC and a lot of how their books, and it's actually more unusual when that doesn't happen. When a book holds its numbers, like the big example there would be kind of White Knight. One of the reasons why that got a lot of buzz and publicity is that the comic was flat in the sense that when it came out at number one, it actually kind of lost a couple people, but very, very little to issue 2. And then it almost started to rise. Well, not almost, it did start to rise again. And the comic actually started gaining buyers as it went on, which is extremely unusual in the big two and how the comics work. So what we see now is a lot of the creators who kind of made big names at Marvel and DC are now bringing projects to Image, and it feels like they're bringing somewhat of that effect with them, where they're making, certainly making some money up front. They're not making some money. They're getting huge initial orders, but then it seems to decrease fairly rapidly in the same kind of momentum or vein that their Marvel and DC work with. So this will be interesting to see how Image really tackles this kind of change in their business. But it is interesting to see this effect play out. Uh, Image as a company is interesting because there's not a there's not like a single genre that it's into. It has a lot of things, and I think over time that's going to kind of come to haunt it a little bit, in the sense that as they're playing bigger game with some of these creators, the titles almost stand on their own. They don't get a umbrella effect from the other titles being published by the brand, and that's to be expected. It's kind of baked into their business model. It's not unusual or even bad, but it does mean they give away some of the marketing opportunities, some of the you know line carry forward opportunities that they used to own. It's expected in 2021 we'll see the return of Saga, which has been a very very strong seller for Image, and we'll have some of these other books kind of on the shelf in their issue 5, issue 6, etc. kind of time frame. I suspect that things like the Department of Truth, I don't see that holding a big number. Crossover is an interesting one because that's either going to kind of hook people right away, or it's gonna shed viewers. Commanders in Crisis is an interesting one because that had a lot of buzz this week from the issue coming out and a lot of really strong reviews. But all the same, having read it, and I don't know how to describe this really. It's I When I read a comic, I have a way of assessing that comic to determine, is this comic going to grow over time, or is it gonna fade from interest? And I think Commanders in Crisis is going to have a hard time holding its audience. Now, by the way, this is completely different from whether I like the comic or not. If there's plenty of comics I like that do not have that kind of big kind of mass market appeal, but I can still recognize whether it has it or it doesn't. An example would be East of West. I really liked East of West, but it was clear from the very first issue that this wasn't going to be a huge mass market appeal comic. It just wasn't. I still loved it. I still liked every issue from start to finish. It felt like it ended poorly, but in general, I think it was a very solid comic. But all the same, it doesn't feel like it's going to be a big hit. And I think Department of Truth, Commanders in Crisis, neither one of those feels like it's going to be a big ongoing comic. It feels like it's going to kind of taper out. Donny Cates brings a lot of buzz and kind of interest in his books, so I would expect Crossover will, keep an audience in the same way that kind of Mark Millar did for Kick-Ass and some of the books he created. Millar had a way of kind of keeping an audience, and people not. It just his books felt that way. His books felt like they were valid to continue. I don't know if I'm describing that well, but hopefully kind of what I mean from picking up those books. But Image as a company, I think, is at a bit of a crossroads. They need to kind of determine their identity. They need to figure out who they are, especially now that DC is going to be probably floating a lot closer to synergy with their corporate initiatives through Warner Media. Marvel is undoubtedly going to be doing the same through Disney. And so it really is Image that has to kind of determine, what does it want to be? What does it want its line to kind of feel like and do and live on as? And I think that's a very hard question. So it's going to be a very tricky thing for them to navigate, because I don't think they've ever really thought of their comic line that way. I think in many cases Image was built to put out good products and have that creator owned friendly kind of company and all the rest, but not, I don't think they ever really kind of understood. And when I say ever, I mean in the last 15 years or so. I don't know that they really are trying to be the number one or number two publisher, but they're finding themselves in potentially a place where they need to be. And the question is, does Image really know how to grow and evolve into that area? But anyway, there's just I've been rambling a lot. This is kind of the thoughts I have about Image as a company, kind of where it's going, where it has some opportunities. I think Image right now, and hopefully they're doing this, they need to find those 2 or 3 creators who are earlier in their career, who are on board to create a 60 to 80 issue run of something. Who's going to produce the next Walking Dead? Who is the next Kirkman who's going to come and be maybe a name at one of the big 2, but a smaller name, and is going to come, and they're going to really dig in and create a new epic run. Because if Saga taught us anything, it's like the interest is there for a long run of a comic doing things differently, but it needs to continue. It can't take these very very long hiatuses. It needs to keep the momentum and build. They need two or three of those, and I don't think that any of the current kind of bigger creative name titles are going to do that. I know crossover is listed as an ongoing, but I'll be quite surprised if that thing goes beyond 12 issues. Maybe it will. Quite possible it will. But it all these feel like more short term projects where they're going to come in, make some money, tell a story, but then call it a day. How long is Undiscovered Country supposed to go? Hey, Scott Snyder, if you're listening to this right now, I know you listen to some of this stuff. How long are you guys planning for? Is it short, long? I can't get a sense of it. And then my advice to Image and all these creators in general is if you are going for a longer run, you should start promoting that. You should start pushing right now that you're in it for the long haul. I think that'll be good for you, good for Image, good for the title, good for everything. People are looking for stability. I'm just saying. Anyway, what do you think about Image? Is that a company you buy comics from? If so, which ones? What do you like? Where do you wish they would go? And what do you think about them? Leave a comment below. Let me know. Like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications. Send me an email. Follow me on social media. But most importantly, thanks for listening.